Welcome to the first ever episode of L.I.F.T.S, which stands for the latest industry fitness trends and stories. Welcome, Mo.
Matthew, I'm so glad we're finally doing this. We've been talking about this for a long time, and here we are with the first episode, and me with half of my voice.
That always happens. Let's share a little bit about what we're doing and why we're doing it then, just to help anyone that's deciding to listen to our first ever episode.
Well, you and I come from the industry. You've been in it for a lot longer than I have, but we're coming from the industry from two different perspectives. And I really enjoy the conversations that we've had and we continue to have over the last time, several months, several years. What excites me is I think people would really love to know, what do folks like us talk about as it relates to the industry? What is relevant? What is new? What is coming? So we wanted to give you an under the hood perspective and kind of share a bit about the things that are relevant to us, and hopefully they'll be meaningful and relevant to you.
And the other thing I think we discuss, which would be nice, is we're going to take these conversations onto LinkedIn, which will allow us to, as best as possible, virtually have some of these conversations and see what people think about what's happening, how it's likely to impact the industry, and just potential ideas that may provide value in people's individual businesses as well.
Well, that's really it. I mean, the reason why I think you and I have such great conversation is we get to talk to a lot of people, and we come from a community and an industry that truly is passionate about the wellness and well-being of people and forwarding and progressing the industry. So yes, having their involvement and hearing comments from everyone. Tell us what you'd like to hear. Tell us guests that you'd love to have on. This is a new format for us. It's a new format for you. And I think we can make this better over time.
Well, the goal is to do this in 30 minutes or less. And I think it's a good time now to go into the first story, which came out just a few days ago. This is relatively new news, which is in Health Club Management. And the press release is that Core Health and Fitness names Brian K. O'Rourke as Chief Executive Officer. Core Health and Fitness, a leading global manufacturer and distributor of fitness equipment and business solutions for facilities around the world, has appointed industry veteran Brian K. O'Rourke as its Chief Executive Officer. What do you know about this story, and what are your thoughts on that, Mo?
Well, I've had the privilege of knowing Core, knowing Michael Bruno, knowing Brian O'Rourke, the team over at Gainline for a few years now. And I think this is a good move. I think Core needed someone to come in that has an understanding of technology, that at the same time has also been in the industry. So it's this fine line of, you need someone who has veteran experience and understands the category, understands the market, but also who could infuse new energy, new concepts, and new ideas into a company that's been around for a few decades. And in fact, Core revolutionized offshore manufacturing of equipment. Michael Bruno was a pioneer in leading that charge. And in 2020, Gainline Capital invested in Core, and I'm sure they're happy with the results, but they're probably looking for more innovation to come from Core in the next few years. And look, Matthew, I mean, this is something that's close to you. This is your industry. I mean, your company with Escape has played a significant role in here. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. And do you think this is a good move for Core?
Yeah, I've known Brian. I think it's a great move for both Core and Brian. My quick question is, do you know who was the CEO prior to Brian? Because I wasn't aware of who was heading up the company.
Yeah, Jason Leone was the CEO prior to Brian, and he's still going to stay on as CFO. So he's still part of the leadership team at Core.
Right. My perspective, in some cases, we compete with Core. I guess it's a pretty competitive space in that market at the moment. And I think the interesting thing for me with Core is certainly knowing a little bit about what Michael Bruno's done in the manufacturing side of things. He's built a fantastic company. And I think as an outsider, it's a very confusing brand. They're definitely, instead of a branded house, it's a house of brands, and they seem to have many different versions of very similar products. We actually distributed the product in the US prior to the pandemic for a period of time, and it was quite confusing. So I'd be interested to see what Brian does from how they position themselves in the industry. I personally see them in the more entry price point of the market, similar to a space which I kind of see Matrix playing. The difference from my perspective between the two companies is Matrix seem generally a lot more joined up and strategic, and I get the impression that Core needs someone to come in there and tighten up what they stand for, who they are. I think that'll be interesting. The other one, the first question that came into my mind as well is what is he in here to do? Is he coming in to just tidy up the business and improve various areas of the operation and improve the P&L and look at selling the company on? Or is it more of a longer term play where they're looking to do something in the industry than what they've done before? But certainly think he's a great person. It's just my question is to figure out, what's their plan, and I'll be interested to hear from Brian what he's looking to do now he's at the helm in that organization.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, Matthew. And I think, look, when you think about Core, I think Core is lacking in identity. And you mentioned that they have multiple product lines. Who are they? Who are they trying to be? The second one too is they never really had a face outside of Michael Bruno to the brand. And now you immediately make this move. You name Brian O'Rourke as CEO. You have just put a face onto that brand. And Brian's got a lot of work ahead of him, but I think he's also coming at the right time, both for Core and for the industry. So I'm excited to see, knowing Brian, he's probably going to implement short-term changes as well, some immediate impact. So I think you'll see some immediate impact coming from this announcement, but he probably has a long-term plan in mind. And look, he's coming to a company that he's known for a while. He's been a long-time advisor for them. So I doubt he's coming in and he's going to find things that might be surprising to him. It sounds like he's coming into something where he's well informed on, understands what his role is. And I'm sure he's spoken to Gainline as well and understands what their objectives are for the mid and long term.
Well, for the next story, we're going to bring on our first guest for the L.I.F.T.S podcast, and that's Emma Barry. Emma.
Hi guys, how are you?
Welcome to the first episode of L.I.F.T.S.
Yay! Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Emma, we're talking about Lululemon, and Lululemon are stopping selling Mirror, the studio Mirror fitness device, and it teams up with Peloton. I'm reading an article here from the CNET, and it says athletic clothing brand Lululemon and exercise equipment company Peloton struck a 5-year partnership which will bring Peloton workouts to people signed up for Lululemon membership programs, but it also means it will stop selling its studio Mirror device. You're very into the studio world, Emma. What are your thoughts on this? What does this mean?
Yeah, well, it means a lot, doesn't it? I mean, we've all sort of watched the whole connected fitness journey, I guess, through the pandemic and out the other side. We know that some of the concepts have struggled. We know that there's been, it's just been really hard to hold on to members beyond the pandemic. We know that cost of acquisition of customers gone through the roof, all of those things. And we know that at the end of times like this, there's usually consolidation as you're now back to business and having to operate your businesses sustainably and profitably and continue to grow those. Now, what better way to do that than to grab sympathetic databases with people who are likely to like your products at the same level, I would say, of the quality of product that you provide. Like if you think of Lululemon, amazing product, beloved by many generations, great quality, massive revenues, all of those things. Peloton, sure, they had a moment during the pandemic, but they built a passionate, incredibly expert base of coaches and a very, very passionate cultish following. Now you bring those together and it's sort of battle of the databases, right? You bring together some of those communities and you sort of get past the cost of acquisition. You then have all the ancillary on sell of apparel and anything else they can think of. So, and you get both companies who are innovating in their own right. And so they've cut their teeth on, many years, many pilots that they'll be running all the time. They know how to adjust in the market for different audiences. We've seen a more diverse audience. We've seen, beginners to fitness. We've seen more advanced. They're able to scale those offerings. So I'm really upbeat. I think it's really and interesting and not really surprising when you think about it, but those would be my initial thoughts.
So how much of this, Emma, do you think, and one, great to have you on. First episode, we wanted to go out with a bang. So Matthew said, we are bringing on Emma Berry. So thank you so much for coming on. But how much of this do you think is about these two companies that are so well-known, household names, focusing on what they do well? Peloton had an apparel side of the business started by the founder's wife that has now since moved on.
Yep.
And you've got Lululemon, who famously acquired Mirror in 2021 for $500 million, and they've written the whole thing off.
Branded very well.
So how much of this is more about, we know what we do well, we don't know the times coming ahead, we want to kind of focus on our core competency and then partner with best in class?
Yeah, we had this exact conversation. I was just come from the Boutique Fitness Solutions Summit in New York City, and we were having that conversation around the member wants variety again, and we're seeing that in the club space as well. So the club is having to get better at providing better experiences of variety. Many of the boutiques have started to diversify either through their own brands. You think of Barry's doing Ride, or you look at others that have said, oh, we need to do some yoga, or maybe we need to do some
Orange Blue Fitness doing Strength 50.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So we saw the customer said it wanted more. The very thing that made Boutique, by example, so great was that absolute focus, that intimate environment, controlling that whole customer journey from end to end and making it truly magnificent. An emotional experience that was missing prior to, say, SoulCycle hitting its straps, Barry's hitting its straps, etc., some of those early adopters of the boutique sector. So I think what you're seeing now is there's a return to strengths. And I think everything was hazed, I think, during the pandemic, where there were unrealistic accelerations of trends and money going everywhere. I've just come off a podcast watching John Canerick and all that crowd talking about how much money was overspent into certain categories. So I think there was that overspend, which gave people probably inaccurate confidence to be able to go and develop products that actually were never going to be sustainable or viable beyond this ridiculous moment, which we all sort of blindly thought might stay more than it did. So I just think there was some unrealistic, and no one could predict the future, right? We all thought we'd all be working at home most of the time and living on the farm. And yet some people have come back, but there's been enough displacement for there to be a little bit of uncertainty at the edges. So I think they've been able to return to what they do really well. As well as, everyone's had to sort of had a good look in the mirror and work out where they went over their skis, right? Whether it was through sales or overreach in product offering, or just frankly doing stuff they're not very good at. So I think all of those things have come to roost. So them coming together is quite amazing, because if you put together the might of both those engines, both innovatively, talent-wise, everything they know about the market, and even just the size of that database. It's an engaged, passionate database on both sides. They're both communities. I wouldn't even call them databases. I think they've done a very good job of managing that. Yeah.
What do you think about this? What does this mean to the connected fitness space? Is this a hands up in the air to say, okay, as you say, we've pushed it too far, and now this industry is going to be consolidating down and just left to a few players? Where do you see this space going?
Of course, it'll consolidate. I think if we just look at any business journey, right, that there might be a moment, you've kind of got to push from niche. And that's sort of something that we're seeing in the mixed reality world, I would say. You're looking at the niche, which has to find a way into mainstream, right? And because there's an additional cost nowadays of capital, be that human, real estate, tech, whatever it is, there's quite a big cost. So you've kind of got to get to profitable pretty quickly. So I sort of look at the end game, and the end game is, I want to be able to do stuff. I want to live my life wherever I am. And part of that's going to be in the connected fitness world. Part of that's going to be in the real life. Part of it's going to follow me around. And as well as that, I just can't help thinking of those big social trends that are sitting right over this. We're sitting currently, I believe, at about 75% of the purse being spent by the Gen Z and the millennials. That's going to go to 80% by 2030. Now, these folks were brought up on this. So they're going to start moving, to these much more tech first environments. They're barely even meeting people unless they've vetted you. Text me, don't call me. Yes, they want the experiences, but I just think there's going to be a shift generationally. I think COAC, I think cost of acquisition is just going to continue to kill a lot of small players. I just think there's some amazing concepts out there, and my heart breaks because you see them at all the pitch competitions, and you just know if they don't get bought by a big company, they are just not going to survive the turmoil. And I'm sure I can see you nodding, Mo. I mean, it's the amounts of money are ridiculous to grab a customer and then to keep them. And then if you have, players like Apple and, any of the big tech players, any of the big Lulus or the big athleisures, any of the big lifestyle, any of the big health companies, if they sort of switch on and go, goodness, here's another whole vertical that we could bring on just by buying a database, like we're sort of seeing in this partnership here, that's going to be a much quicker way than even the best idea that's over here, but is just not going to get the funding. And like I say, you've got to get from niche, those early adopters, which might be, famous sports people or Oprah or whatever. I mean, Oprah, probably bad example. I think she's quite mainstream. But you've got to take that niche into mainstream, and that's really hard. And the burn on that is just astronomical. The size of crazy.
We've got 30 seconds on the story. Like any closing comments, Mo?
Well, I think, look, Emma's spot on. Lululemon has 13 million subscribers on their essential platform. And I agree, cost of acquisition is not only getting more expensive, but it's more difficult. Marketers in 5 years are going to be wishing for the days of SEO and Google search ads, what they had to worry about. Now with AI coming in, AI search engines coming in, people streaming, not on traditional media, capturing that customer is going to be really hard. So these types of moves, I think, are brilliant and are really going to help accelerate growth.
Next story, which transitions to a previous content provider, which was Exponential, and they're in the news at the moment. This is from Athletech, and there's Exponential Fitness to unveil VR app for Meta Quest 3. Exponential Fitness will introduce a virtual and mixed reality app on Meta's Quest 3 headset, bringing virtual fitness content from the boutique fitness franchises brands, including Club Pilates, Stretch Labs, Pure Barre, to homes around the world. So what's I guess the first question would be, what is the impact for Exponential and Mirror? And then what are your thoughts on this new move into the metaverse?
Yeah, look, I think I'd love to get Emma's point of view on this as well, but Exponential was previously partnered with Mirror on content. They still have a partnership that's going to continue on. But I think this is the next stage for them, right? They're trying to figure out and say, how do we get into the next thing, the next device? And the next device is in the metaverse. Now, whether that is going to happen today for mass adaptation or happen in 5 years, it is going to happen at some point. And I think that they will have a lot of learnings from this. But Emma, one thing I'm curious for you, you mentioned you're coming out of the Boutique Fitness Summit in New York. What I've always wondered about is, how do franchisees feel about digital? Things like Exponential, like this coming out, Exponential is largely driven by their franchisees. They're now going to be on the metaverse. What do you think their impressions are of moves like this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't have those specific conversations with people from Expo. It wasn't actually a topic, to be honest. It was very brick and mortar focused. It was very operational focused. There was some discussion around franchising. I think if I can just look at the world, it's always interesting. Like when we're in business, or my observation has been, whatever brand I'm working with, there's always that initial feeling of threat, of being threatened by anything new in a vertical. So, the boutiques were a threat to the clubs. Well, as it turned out, there was a reason to be threatened by the boutiques, but there's a reason why. So I think a lot of people, to be honest, don't know a lot about it. I think they use the word. We've all been at CES together. We've been at Les Mills Live. We've been at some of these Connected Health and Fitness where metaverse is thrown around a lot more. We know that it's been a very slow. There was a lot of excitement a couple of years ago. Everyone was in the metaverse, and then it was like, oh, it's a bit like crypto. Where's it gone? Sort of that. But the bottom line is, it's going to prevail. And I'm with you, Mo. It's just a matter of speed. And again, if we just apply our business basics, the costs are going to have to come down, which they've started to. So some of the hardware costs are beginning to come down. The content's amazing. And again, I'm leaning into the Les Mills example. I mean, look at Body Combat. It was the app of the year, according to Meta. So they have cracked it. And you tried it, Matt, and you're definitely not a meta guy. I shouldn't judge you like that, but I don't pick you as a meta guy. And you had a great time because when
It was good. It was
Yeah.
it was good. But my question is, like, for running a business in an industry that's pretty, it's not booming at the moment.
Yes.
And the question, I guess, is how far outside of your core proposition makes sense to go. Like, from a marketing perspective, it's great, but can you, as you mentioned earlier, get too far over your skis and get involved in something that's still very early stages and could easily go wrong, particularly if you're a company that's listed on the stock exchange. I could see how, if you do get it wrong, it could be seen as a negative. But I've never run a company on the stock exchange, so I don't know.
There's always
But
time, Matt. There's always time. Come on. A few more Bulgarian bags, you'll be right. Look, I think there's a couple of things around that. One is, when you're a company that size, you have to be where your audience is going to be. And the audience, I mean, what I know about the mixed reality, the virtual reality market, is when you start to change that. Now, I'm not saying you'd have to do that. I would say partner it to get there. But unique people, whole bunch of unique people, and I use Les Mills because I know that example very well, whole lot of people who've never done fitness before, all of a sudden working out through a different world, and there was a transfer to the real world. So this is about finding your audience. Now, should everyone do it? No, you shouldn't. It's not a cheap exercise, and you've got to have deep expertise, as per our last example. However, you will need to be there if you do want to be relevant for a growing market of, when I say gamers, I say people who are sort of, they're tech native, they like to sort of dabble in other worlds. That is getting bigger. Now, that's going to get bigger in our world per se. That's going to get bigger in accelerating skill building, simulation. Like, we're definitely going to be using technologies. You can become a better tennis player by 25% over a 4-week period by doing VR, for example. So I think the world's going to start using it a lot more as the costs come down, and that's going to start to bleed into fitness as well. But I think they should take the risk. And it is a risk, but it's all a risk, Matt. Like, everything's a risk today. But that is certainly where some people are going to be. And if you're a brand that size, you don't want to be left behind on that technology. So you don't want to bet the farm on it, but you definitely want to be playing in that space, would be my view.
Well, last story, so we can finish on time. A Form acquires Climber and targets B2B sales. So this just come out from Fit Insider today, actually. And the story is: Connected Fitness is consolidating. Interactive Strength Inc., maker of the fitness screen Form, is acquiring vertical climber brand Climber. Through sales and distribution deal with treadmill maker Woodway, the brands will prioritize commercial sales, including gyms, hospitality, and medical clinics. That's an interesting story, and be interested. I've got my thoughts on it, but interested to hear what you guys are thinking.
What do you think, Mo?
Well, I think, look, there were a lot of reasons behind this. If I were to go back, and I think the biggest value prop here for Form is the distribution partnership with Woodway.
Yeah.
Form went public early this spring, and in fact, if I pull up their latest stock price, I don't think the markets represented this too well. I'm just going to open up their latest share price here. Oh, that's not it. Let me.
A former listed company, then, are they, Mo?
Yeah, Form is a listed company right now. So here you go. Here's the latest share price, and the announcement came at around mid-morning, and the share price actually went down as a result of this. And I think there's a couple reasons for this. Form was about to get delisted in August. They got a notice from the New York Stock Exchange that they were going to be delisted, and they had to make a move. I think this acquisition of Climber, there's no cash being transferred. It's a pure equity deal, and it's also only an asset deal, meaning that they're not buying any of the debt. They're only buying the assets of Climber. The biggest value here, I think the winner in this is actually Woodway. Woodway, who's a third party, is a true winner in this transaction because what it allows them to do is to offer a connected cardio product in Climber with a new modality that they don't offer, and also now compete in the connected strength market with Form. So the distributors of Woodway, as a result of this deal, will now have access to two platforms that have had a lot of investment go into. So we'll see how this pans out for both companies. But I do think that Woodway's got the most to win here.
It's an interesting one. From what I understand, Climber have been trying to get into or working on the commercial fitness sector for quite some time. And I just, whenever I go into clubs with these units in, they're not being used. And so is it good for Woodway? Maybe, but they've still got to overcome the problem of people going up and using them. You know, it's one of those products. I can't remember what was the company that made the original version that it was based on? VersaClimber. You kind of have these one or two in the club, and there's the people that love them, and it's a tough workout, to be honest. But you've always got a few old blokes that really like to work out on it, but everyone else never just seems to go up there and use them. So although I think it's a great idea, I still question whether the product itself is as good as maybe what it's being made out to be. And I think I do know that there's certainly some product quality improvements and biomechanic improvements that are required on the original ones. I think that's something that they've noted for a while. So I guess from my perspective in the commercial space, there's I don't think it's quite as exciting if I was a distributor about the news, because I think they've still got a long way to go. But what I don't understand is maybe there's some technology carryover or this connected strength that is probably a bigger win for anybody that I don't know too much about. What do you think? What do you think about? Do you use the VersaClimber, Emma?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's sort of like three slightly tough news stories coming out of the pandemic. So it sort of feels like a little bit of a perfect storm of consolidated connectedness. Like there's definitely a coming together. So I definitely, applaud all of Mo's comments around that. I love it as a workout. I actually went to Denver and actually did it in the Climber studio, and obviously love Woodway and know the Form guys as well. So I really hope it works and comes together. I just think it's, there's a lot happening in that space, but I love it. I'm a little bit like you, Matt. I think everything's got you've got to get over that barrier. And I think one of the big things we've got to, and this is what technology's big gift to humanity is in the end, and I don't think we're there yet. I still think it's a bumpy ride, but around that user experience has to be ease. It has to be, I'm in it and I'm off. And, so, I mean, I love it as a workout. I actually wish I could do it. I don't want one in my garage, but I wish I could do it a bit more regularly, because I do think it's very efficient. So I love it from a time perspective. It certainly needed some ergonomic adjustments and stuff in the early days, but it was certainly getting there in the end. But I hope it works, because I love all those guys. But yeah, it'll be slightly uphill for sure, as most businesses and fitnesses are feeling right now.
Well, I think you mentioned one thing around consolidation. I do think that before the end of the year, there is going to be more consolidation happening. Look, we saw Lululemon or Mirror and Peloton. That is not a true consolidation, but in effect is one. You are now seeing Form with Climber and with Woodway as a third party. And I think there's going to be more to come before the year's over.
Well, look, we've hit our time. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the first episode of L.I.F.T.S. If anyone's got any questions about subjects or comments, we're going to take this conversation onto LinkedIn. So we'd love to hear what you think in terms of subjects that we could discuss. If you agree what's been said here, if you disagree what's been said here, then please feel free to give us the information. And thank you for the first episode of L.I.F.T.S.
Yeah, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening, Emma. Thank you so much for joining. A bit last minute, but it was great to have you on.
Great to see you both. All the best.
Thank you very much.